Okay, so tonight, welcome to the Banksia Project's Garden Room. This is an event focusing on mental health in music. The event is proudly supported by ARIA, Support Act, Ovolo Hotels and Medibank. Round of applause for those supporters. Not possible without them. Thank you, guys. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land. The City of Sydney acknowledges the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as the traditional custodians of our land, Australia. The City acknowledges the Gadigal of the Eora Nation as the traditional custodians of the place we now call Sydney. The Banksia Project is a mental health charity which focuses on the early intervention of men's mental health. We're focusing on music, given the alarming statistics, which we're going to get more into as we have our conversations tonight. People in the music industry suffer 10 times more severe anxiety symptoms than people in general population. That is scary. We're going to talk about that a lot more tonight. I'm sure a lot of people have connections to that, which we're excited to hear about. This is something which is important for me to do tonight, just because the conversations, I'm sure some of which will be confronting. We're covering some very personal topics here, so it goes without saying we appreciate you guys handling this in a respectful way and listening to people, giving them their moment. But another thing that I need to mention is that something we call an audience trigger warning. It's important to note that some of tonight's conversations may be triggering, they may be challenging. If anyone is affected by the conversations, you can contact one of the members of the Banksia Project's team. They'll be here tonight. Alana's over there, but there's a whole team here. We'll introduce you to those guys. There's services such as Beyond Blue, Support Act, or a local GP. It's very important that we get that message out there because these conversations can have an effect on people. Once again, a round of applause. Let's start for all of our guests. Here we go. I think it's important that I do a proper introduction for our guests because we have quite the lineup tonight. This is very exciting. Some of them I've met and worked with before. Some I'm meeting for the first time, but I admire their work. So this is going to be such a diverse, interesting conversation. So we fell in love with this man through Australian Idol. Since then, he's had #1 hits. He's had 5 top 10 albums. He's even toured with Bryan Adams. Only the top tier artists can be shortened to a one-word name. Prince, Beyonce, Madonna, but in Australia we say Nosey. Yes. Yes. Our next guest is a dancer, a TV host, an ARIA-nominated recording artist. He's featured in hit musicals. I believe that makes him a quadruple threat. Please welcome the annoyingly talented Timomatic.
Hello.
Next up, a woman who has hosted the biggest nighttime radio show in the country. She's a TV host, she's a writer, she's a passionate campaigner on issues such as endometriosis. But her career highlight, she once hosted a nighttime radio show with me on Triple M Adelaide. It's true. And she still doesn't know all the words to Khe-Sanh, which is concerning. Please welcome Mel Greig, everybody. Our next guest is an artist manager from One Louder Management, managing homegrown superstars such as Paul Kelly, Sarah Blasco, Kate Miller-Heidke. Please welcome the man I'll now be hitting up for Paul Kelly tickets. It's the great Bill Cullen. Next up, he's managed children's entertainment juggernaut High Five, general manager for Havas Sports and Entertainment. He's directed the Bondi Film Festival for 13 years. I met him when he was managing Thirsty Merc. He's very excited at the moment because it's that time of the year when In the Summertime gets played on repeat on radio, and that's how he got his 8th beach house. Please welcome Francis Coady. Next up, he's a film producer. He plays the saxophone in Flight Facilities. Love that. He is a visual artist, much like Timomatic. He's annoyingly talented. He's a founding member of Sneaky Sound System. It's Nick Broadhurst. I think that's my work done. I put 9 hours into those intros. I was hoping for a bit more, but we can work on that. Guys, we are here to talk about a very serious topic, and we're going to get around the room on most of the topics. I've got 5 or 6 areas that I'm particularly interested in talking about. I want to get into it straight away. Like I mentioned at the top, mental health impacts people in the music industry 10 times more than people as part of the general population, which is very concerning. On a broader sense, 1 in 3 Australians will face mental illness in their lifetime. So if it's not you, then it's someone in your family, it's someone you work with, it's a friend. So that's why events like this are so important for us to get chatting, to learn how to better have those conversations and to improve people's way of life. So let's start with the music industry, which is why we're here tonight. So we've mentioned that 10 times more likely to suffer anxiety or mental health concerns than the general population. Let's start start with you, Shannon. Why do you think that is? What is it about this industry that makes it so prevalent?
Mate, I mean, I think the biggest thing probably is you're on such a grand scale. You know, everybody, or the majority of people would know people at some level in the music industry. So your wins and obviously your failures are so widely spread, if you know what I mean. So I think that's probably the biggest thing at the moment. And, you know, there's probably only 5% of people who are actually in the music scene that actually make it to the level that everyone's hoping to when they start out. So, you know, it's 1 in a million chance to make it to the top. And then on top of that, it's not just, like you have the Australian cricket team, they're chosen by a panel of selectors. I think the music industry is very much a popularity contest as well. You've got to be popular with the public. You can have the greatest song in the world, but if you're a bit of a arse, it goes against everything, you know, and public opinion matters so much. So I think that people celebrate the highs, but the lows are the parts that we're talking about tonight, and that people have to suffer in silence a lot.
Tim, what is it about the industry that you think makes it so prevalent?
I think it's the fact that as an artist, no matter what happens, good or bad, your face is kind of at the front of it. So if a project that you're on, because I think for people who don't know in the music industry, to get songs out there to the final product, to the public, there are so many moving parts and so many teams and members of teams that are involved. And it really could take one kind of chink in the chain to kind of make it all go down. But guess whose face is still on the cover? You know, having to bear it. And so I think being at the front of every campaign, it just weighs heavy on you. And I think as an artist, there's an inner child that we kind of create from that makes us want to do this. And that fully grown hopefully comes to a place where we have a song or something we can give out. And so when that comes out, and it's met with either disappointment or it just doesn't work, that's really tough to tell your inner child, like, hey man, you know, that thing that you thought was so special, not everyone thinks that way.
Were you told that as a child when you were starting out, when you were finding your talents and where you were going to progress with things? Did you have examples of that?
I did. Look, I was lucky enough I was in a family that taught me from a young age to always have self-confidence. And being a musician and an artist, you're unique by nature. And on top of that, for me, I grew up as one of the only black kids around at all. So I had to learn from the jump that, you know, it's okay that you have a vision, that you have to kind of back by yourself and hold on to that no matter what happens. But it gets tough. It's really tough.
Mel, you're coming at it from a different angle in terms of, I guess, closer to the media side of the music industry, which is still a huge part of it, hosting radio shows, interviewing these artists. From your experience, and you can tie it into the radio industry, why is it so prevalent in these industries?
The thing is, when you work in radio and even as a creative artist, you are being yourself. So you are completely putting your personality, your stories, your loved ones, your life on the line. So when you start to get that critique from people, or when people go, oh, that was a shit story, and it's like, well, actually, I loved that story. That's really special to me. It's a personal attack over and over again. So even from your bosses, from the public, it's an attack on who you are, because to do our jobs, we have to be us. We have to be real.
Bill, you'd see the best and the worst of artists, the good days and the bad days. Why is the music industry troubled by this mental health concern and these anxieties?
I think the music industry is an incredibly challenging business. I think a lot of people see glamour in it, and there is very little glamour at all. I think.
But that ringtone, though, what's it?
Best ringtone I've ever heard in my life.
Does it go full monkey mode after a moment?
That was actually a sneak peek of Nick's new single, which you're going to hear at the end. It was supposed to be at the end, but thank you for the sneak peek. Back to you, Bill.
I think as Tim and Shannon both talked about that there's often failure and how hard that can be to deal with. I think on the other side, that success in itself can be incredibly hard to deal with. That everybody wants a piece of you. A lot of artists are quite introverted, yet they're expected to have their face on all the time. there's very little sleep, there's alcohol pushed at you. So I believe the successes can actually be as damaging as the failures, and there's not much in the middle there.
Well, that's an interesting area, Francis. I'd love to get your thoughts. I met you when you were managing Thirsty Merc, hugely successful Australian act. I know Ray Thistlethwaite quite well personally, legendary guy, very, very intelligent, complex guy, and I've had conversations with him about these very topics. How did you find that? Let's use Thirsty Merc as an example.
Yeah, I think there's an elephant in the room, is that there's a certain type of personality that enables you to get on stage. So that can be a super high personality, it can also be an incredibly low personality in terms of your approach to life. So I won't talk particularly about Ray, he's still a friend, but I said he's just straight into it. I think to be extroverted to that level, it's unlike anything you've ever seen. It literally is an abnormal situation. You are on stage in front of 5,000 people, you're completely extroverted. To get to that state of mind is slightly abnormal. Would you? Would you agree? Yeah. And then off that, I mean, I've had situations with other artists where we've had entire promotion days with 10,000 people waiting for a performance and the person couldn't get out of bed. So there's these two extremes, and present company may be excluded, I don't know. But I think that is the nature of what propels and creates the art scene more broadly. You see it in film, you see it in TV, particularly with talent. So in the music industry, I think you've got these two highs and lows of those personality traits, which sets the tone often.
That's a really interesting example you've given. If we could just stay with you for a second, Francis, the 10,000 people waiting a public appearance. There's a lot of management, planning, sponsors involved in something like that. The artist isn't feeling it, doesn't want to be there. How do you manage that? What can you do in that situation?
Crawl into a small box and hide. It's actually happened, bizarrely, it's happened twice to me. I'm like, really? The same radio station? How do you... Well... First and foremost, you check if it's a true mental issue. In one case it was, the other one was complete and utter intoxication. And it was a really important moment in my career, and it was devastating. On the other hand, there was a moment where the person was mentally in a very dark space. Yeah. So we had to negotiate with the radio station at length. It was 5:30 in the morning. We had, those 5 a.m. calls for TV, and we had to negotiate it. And they were good about it. The other case, they weren't so good about it, and it cost us about $25,000. Wow. So, those I've been in those situations, but I think it's changed. I was managing Thirsty Merc at the peak 8 years ago, give or take. You're probably still hearing it in the summertime, but. Back then, this wasn't really happening. Was it, Nolsey? It wasn't really...
No, definitely not spoke about, that's for sure.
No. So I think this is a far more open conversation. So I think networks, radio stations, etc., are far more open to that.
Have you had those days, Nolsey, where there is a big crowd or a big show and that for some reason, whether it's mental health or other, you just can't do it?
Well, mate, a lot of the time, the hardest part that I've found with it is every show that you do, people come along and they judge you on that one night that they've seen you. That might be your 5th show in a row, and you've got nothing left, you know what I mean? So you wear that so personally, you know what I mean? So you do whatever you have to do to get up and give them the show that you think that they deserve by buying each ticket each and every night. So, it's because you're carrying the weight of the whole show, it's not, and like early in my career, the first tour I booked was 15 shows in 10 days. Because the first original show sold out in half an hour, so they decided to put matinees on. So that was driving from Cairns down to Brisbane with a day off. So I literally just went, how the hell am I going to make this work, So halfway through I sort of lost my voice, and thank God I had that one day off to somewhat recover, But you just, sometimes you just don't feel it, and that's understandable because you're tired, and it's hard to be on that high and be that person all the time when you're just weary and drained,
Nick, what about you on the end, mate? We're talking obviously about the anxiety, the mental health issues in the music industry. What have you seen?
I can definitely relate to limping my way through to the end of a tour and hoping my voice holds up. Like there's an element of stress as a singer that is always with you, It's really hard to escape that because if you've got no voice, what do you do? So that's been a struggle for me personally. But in terms of mental health, I remember there's almost two stages to a successful career. There's the part before, this was my experience, where we worked incredibly hard for a long time, probably 6 or 7 years to build what became Sneaky Sound System. Looks like an overnight success, but we worked our asses off, right? And back then there was cigarettes in nightclubs and, we'd play till 6 a.m. sometimes. Drugs were everywhere, alcohol everywhere. And my nickname actually was Mr. San Pellegrino because I just didn't touch anything. So people knew, don't offer me anything. I didn't even drink a beer. But I got to that place because I just knew that if I didn't take care of this physical temple, that my mental health was going to suffer. And for me personally, my experiences with mental health have come from not taking care of this. And I think at its most fundamental levels, like mental health is very complex for everyone. It's very hard to do blanket statements, but I think one thing that you can almost blanket with mental health is there are some basics that you can do that can really move the needle on your mental health, and taking care of your physical body would be number one for me personally.
Well, that's a great segue to what we should talk about next, which is on a daily basis, on a daily level, how do you keep yourself mentally healthy? And on a bigger picture level, how do you keep yourself mentally healthy?
Yeah, the big thing with me, I've always played sport, so I love training, going to the gym and training, because it's funny, because you can work so hard on something, and it's like creating or inventing a product, and you give it to the distributors and then they just don't move it out of the warehouse. So that's i.e., you take it to a radio station, they don't play it. Or so you've worked so hard on this passion project that it comes from your soul and comes from your very being. And then all of a sudden there's a breakdown, like Tim said, that one sort of chink in the armour sort of thing. And people never... I remember getting a coffee one day and a young lady goes, I'm a big fan. When are you putting out a new song? I went, I did 3 months ago. But you wouldn't know that because it's not been played on radio. But I've found for me... As a maintenance thing, the gym's so great because you put in the hard work and you get results.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you can actually, there's something tangible about the effort that you're putting in. So it sort of offsets the other end, which is the career, the business side of things, where you can work so hard and believe in something so passionately, and just all of a sudden, like Tim said, you're the only one that likes it, or it doesn't translate like you hoped it would, or you actually thought it would. A lot of these times, you don't even think of that in the back of your mind, that you just think this is an absolute cracker, and then all of a sudden it's absolutely demoralising to all of a sudden find out that nobody thinks the same as you do a little bit, because obviously lyrically or melodically the song that you've written is very close to your soul, and it's your story or it's your song, so people just don't get it, or they don't get it the way you get it, you know what I mean, which is very hard. But yeah, so the gym for me was one. I get to get in there and switch off. I don't go there to socialise whatsoever. I just put my tunes on, listen to somebody else's music for a little while, and
you listen to Timomatic, right?
Yeah, that's right.
What are your top 10 Timomatic songs?
Yeah, all of them.
Tim, what about you? Obviously, you're at the gym listening to Nollsy.
Gotta live.
What about you on a daily
extra reps
on a daily level, but also on a bigger picture level to stay mentally healthy?
I'm definitely with Nollsy on this one, and I find that the working out is an anchor for me. I think the music industry, the best way I could put it is it's a Ferris wheel that just doesn't stop. It's a Ferris wheel that doesn't make sense, and I think for your own sense of well-being, you need anchors in your life that are staples that keep you, that no matter what, that's going to kind of happen, because everything else is more or less out of your control. You know what I mean? Just going on what we were talking about before. It's like, and even in having something that's successful, it's like, okay, that worked. So do people want that thing? But I've evolved now. I want to give this thing. I mean, if I go it just keeps moving. So I think for me, working out is very important. I'm into a lot of audiobooks as well, to listen to audiobooks when I work out, to kind of just keep my mind healthy and to learn other things outside of music. And sometimes I have to stop listening to music altogether. I don't know, but I analyze every track, especially if it's amazing. I'm like,
What did they do?
How did they do that? I'm not getting any reps in. What am I doing? Yes.
He's clearly getting reps in.
I am. So definitely that on the daily type of thing. But in terms of long term, I think it's about being really rock solid with your goals, but very fluid with the strategy of getting there. I've started to realize that, anything can happen daily in the industry, and you have a goal and you set it, which is amazing, is important, like an anchor, but you really have to be fluid on how you achieve it. And I think a lot of that is just being able to love yourself through things and self-empathy, which honestly, I've started to learn in the last 18 months of my career of just being like, it's okay that things aren't happening the way you want them to, or people don't see you the way you want them, because you can't really control how people take you. And so self-empathy has been a big thing that has kind of helped me in the last 18 months.
That's awesome. That's a really good pointer. I know we have some people in the room who are starting out in the music industry who are learning a lot already. We're talking quite generally, which is a good starting point, but I want to get quite specific, and obviously if you're uncomfortable with the questioning, that's cool, but I want to know, I'm also mindful of time, how much time we have here tonight. We're talking a lot about, there's a theme of highest of highs, lowest of lows. That's very much a theme here, and that ties in perfectly to mental health. Can we talk about you guys, I want to go pretty quickly with this and then we'll explore a couple of them, but highest of high and lowest of low. Can you answer that, Nolsey?
Yeah, well, I've had probably my fair share of both, really.
We're about to go to the highlights reel now.
Yeah, I mean, especially my journey. Like, it was overnight type thing. I've been going on a TV show, and all of a sudden you've got number ones. I think that was the biggest, hardest thing for me. But I'd been in a cover band or tour bands for 7 years before that. But the way the show portrayed the people in the seasons was, you come and sing in the shower, and then you can be a rock star or whatever, which couldn't have been further from the truth, because the top 12 in my year, the first year of Idol, had all been in bands and touring for long over a decade. So, that there was the first sort of falsity that came about.
So is that a low for you?
No. I mean, that part, the exception into the industry was a hard part. I didn't think there'd be, my philosophy is hate the game, don't hate the player type thing. You know what I mean? So, but I copped a lot of negativity from within the industry itself, because people didn't think I deserved it, because they thought, I'd never sang hardly before.
What was the lowest of that? We're just trying to get to some examples, like how low are we talking?
Well, I mean, on top of that, I think the lowest ones were the negative press, that I've received a few times. I think the hardest part with them is it's like Tim said, it's my face and my face. I'm not a band that's played up on an aeroplane or anything like that. So the hardest thing to deal with that was probably the misrepresentation of a lot of it. Just to get public opinion or to shock value. The details that were instrumental in the story were left out for the benefit of the story, if you know what I mean, to blow it out of proportion as much as they possibly could. So that's the hardest part. That's when the phone stops ringing, and that's when people, who've been so close to you the whole time, all of a sudden aren't there in the end. That's when you feel at your lowest or at the very most alone,
Highest of highs?
Oh, there's been great things. And there's another part too. It's hard to continually have the negatives brought up when there's so many positives. Like I was doing an interview the other day for the Carols in Adelaide that I'm doing this weekend, and the journalist said, so when you think of Adelaide, obviously you've had a bit of controversy over here, what's your memories of Adelaide? And I went, well, I was saying at Clipsal 500 in front of 50,000 people. There's probably the first one springs to mind. And then the Idol final sold out 13,000 people. Did that here too, and I toured here with Bryan Adams and live. So, it's frustrating that I know what you're thinking about. Yeah. Wanker. But,
did you actually say wanker?
No, I didn't say it. No,
just checking, because I would have found that audio.
But then I said, and I'm hoping to add, a great experience of playing at the Carols to the long list of great experiences that I've had in Adelaide. So when I think about Adelaide, and what springs to mind are all them things before anything that you'll want to dwell on,
Absolutely. Nick, highest of high, lowest of low.
Yeah, for me, music has been my joy. It's never felt like peaky and trophy. It's always felt just like a source of joy for me. And I think the highs and lows have come outside of that for various reasons. I would say the highs are little things. The highs for me are, tomorrow having 3 weeks with my son on holiday. That's a high for me, But the low, I had...
So, sorry, just on that, is that something that you identified early in your music career, that you need to find those outside areas, or, family, friends, those... Did you know that early, or did it take time to discover that was important?
It took me making a lot of mistakes to figure it out. And, to be playing cricket with a 3-year-old son and not fully present, or, always my mind elsewhere, and then thinking, wow, that can't be my legacy as a father, so wanting to make those changes. But, outside of that, I lived a pretty good existence. I grew up with a great family and, I had a good life. But I never really had experienced depression before. And for me, it actually hit me 2017, January 1st. Like, I know the exact day. It literally just snapped on me one morning when I woke up. There wasn't a lot leading up to it. It just kind of hit me, and it was very hard to explain. And it went for about 12 months. And I must say that my story is a good one, because I got to experience that full spectrum of human, emotion, but I didn't stay in it for too long, thank God.
When you say that it hit you on that day, and you clearly remember the exact date and all of that sort of thing, can you try to describe what you mean by it hit you? Because I'm sure everyone in this room has woken up and I don't feel like going to work today, or I feel shit today. Like, that's a normal human feeling to have that. But what was it that was different about that day that made you go, no, I actually have to do something here?
I wouldn't have connected it to the word depression for like 6 months, because that had never been my reality. For me, I just woke up with a sense of hopelessness. And I think hopelessness is the most insidious thing. There was no particular reason for me to be hopeless. It just kind of happened. It was quite bizarre. And I think I can see some triggers that may have led to that. One of those things was I had gone off and produced a film and done other things, and I left my music to the side, the thing that brings me the most joy. So, I did identify early on that I had to stay balanced. I had to spend time in Mother Nature. I had to meditate every day. I had to eat well, sleep well. And these are all things that don't go hand in hand with a musical career. They get pushed to the side very easily.
That's cool. That's awesome that you recognise that. Mel, highest of high, lowest of low. Tough question. How would you look at something like that in terms of your industry and your mental health?
Well, I literally went from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows. I'd worked 15 years in the radio industry to get my dream job, which was the Hot 30 Countdown, where I got to interview people like Timomatic and Nollsy and One Direction. I was living in a penthouse, going to all these parties. It was everything I thought it would be that I'd worked my ass off to get. And then one day I went to work, and it was when the Duchess of Cambridge was in hospital for morning sickness, and someone on the team suggested we do a prank call. I don't know if everyone in this room is aware of what happened. We did a prank call. It was approved through the process, which was out of my control. And the end result was a nurse taking her own life. And I don't know if anyone has ever felt responsibility for that before, but it was instant major depression. That guilt was, I lift people, I help people, I don't destroy them. So I went from this normal, happy, healthy girl, had a dream job, had everything going for her, and I literally, within the space of a few days, hit rock bottom, to the point where 2 months into the torture of not what people were saying to me, which was go kill yourself every day, the guilt you feel for being involved in something like that, I didn't know if life was an option for me. So to go from being happy, healthy, to know you can have a major illness that puts you on the brink of suicide is a very scary thought, and it can happen to anyone, and it can be triggered, or it can be something where one day you wake up and you go, what the fuck is wrong with me? Why do I feel this way? And it's quite scary when you don't have control and you don't know why you feel that way. For me, I knew why, because it was the guilt. But it takes a long time to go from that high to the low to try and rebuild yourself back up. And I'm certainly not back up at the high, but, I chose life that day when I sat there and go, is suicide an answer for me? And it's not. And it's not for everybody. And life is shit. Life is hard. but it's precious. And when you get through that bad day, the next day, it's a new day. Just grasp it, just take it, and just keep trying. And that's what I've done, and 6 years later, I'm still here.
Round of applause for Mel for sharing that. That's incredible. I mean, having known you personally, I'm sure a lot of you will be aware it was the biggest story in the country and internationally. It was dominating every news service, and not for a couple of days, for weeks, and then eventually months. And everyone was worried about you. I was worried about you. We were all checking in. There's only so much checking in you can do. When you say you chose life, what were the things that helped you choose life? Like, just if someone does find themselves in an awful situation like that, what helped you get through that to be here today?
I think, and also someone drank my champagne. Can I please have another one? Excuse me. Yes, please.
So the answer is champagne. No, I don't think it's a message you're trying to get out.
Here's champagne to us. Thank you. That's why I was drinking, everybody. When you said, how do you deal with your mental health? There you go. Shape knickers, no gym, and champagne. Look, the thing is, and I'll take you to that place. It's a dark place, and I don't want anyone to, do speak to someone if you are feeling unwell. But I think you need to get to the absolute bottom where you're sitting there. And I remember thinking, okay, if I was to commit suicide, how would I do it? And I was looking and thinking and going, I can't see. Oh, in my hand, please. Thank you. Can't bend down. I've got my shape knickers. Can't bend down. Thank you. You think and analyse, and I was trying to visualise it, and I couldn't. And because it's not the answer. It's not the answer for anyone. I know how hard it is. Like, I was told every day, and it wasn't like, it felt like months for the media, but it was 2 years, Sam. 2 years of being the front page of the paper of people saying, go kill yourself. You've killed someone. I'm going to kill your mum. I'm going to kill your sister. You think of the worst things that you can possibly be told in your life to get to that point. But you go, okay, why would you die? What? Just make it easy for yourself, for everybody else? There is so much more to live for. Yes, this is happening. Yes, this is awful. I have family. I have friends. I have a life. And that's when you need to go, okay, what can I do to get to the next step? One step at a time. I loved inspirational quotes, just chatting to your friends, finding a way that the next day is better than the last. If you can just do that, you will keep going. And that's what I did.
That's fantastic. Bill, Francis, for your artists that you've managed over the years, if they've experienced a real low point, whether it's personal or professional, what is your role in that, and how do you help them with those situations, and how do you identify them? Give us some insight to a management with an artist who's experiencing these types of things.
I'm going to talk more about myself, if that's okay.
Of course.
Which I don't get to do very often, so I'm normally talking about artists. I have bipolar disorder, so my life has been highs and lows.
It was feedback.
Closer to your mouth.
Because it was close.
Yeah.
Gotcha. That's fine.
And it's something I didn't get diagnosed until maybe 10 years ago, and I think that's something that has changed and needs to change more. That it took me a long time to get proper access to the mental health system. Basically, since I've been on medication, things are a hell of a lot better. I first got treated for depression after my brother died of suicide, and that was just a weird time of where the head can go with suicide. I could see the absolute devastation that caused me and my family, yet in my depression I wanted to do the same thing, and it was only thinking about my young girls that stopped me from doing that. But yeah, it's just really scary where your head can take you.
Absolutely. So, diagnosed with bipolar, is that correct?
Yeah.
And
on the highs and lows, it can be really weird that things that I feel should give me the most joy in life, like being at a massive sold out show, I'm standing there going, why is this not doing anything for me at all?
So just to explore that a bit further, the medication for bipolar, talk me through, is that a process to find the right dosage, etc., that works for you? What was your experience with that?
Yeah, because at first, after my brother died, I was diagnosed with depression, so I was on antidepressants, which actually made the bipolar worse in a lot of ways. That as I went down, I was put on medication. They'd up it and up it and up it, which sent me into hypomania, and then I'd crash, and it was repeat. And then when I was diagnosed properly, it took kind of 4 or 5 years to get the right mix of, I take 3 different medications, but to get that right mix, it took a long time. And the weird thing with these kind of medications is that nothing is proven to be right for everybody. Everything reacts differently, side effects are different. It's a real trial and error process still.
Round of applause for Bill for sharing that. Thank you very much, mate. Thank you for sharing. Francis, I know that you've had a very challenging year. Are you happy to share some of what's happened this year?
Yeah, sure. I think as managers, we struggle to talk about ourselves. So I'll put that second.
You don't struggle to take 30% though. Ooh.
Hang on a sec. Bill and I have only ever taken 20. The agent takes 10, doing nothing. I'll kind of split the answer. Just on the artist front, I spent a long time, like 15 years in management, talking to artists about, mate, I think you need help. Literally, I was the bloke going, I think you need help. And what kicked in, it wasn't so much ego, there was a perception that their creativity would have been squashed and destroyed by getting on medication. It was a constant conversation across numerous acts, from pop acts to TV children acts to you name it.
Where do you think that perception? I've heard that perception.
Yeah,
where do you think that comes from?
I'll tell you. I think it comes from the Doors. It's a funny statement, but I read a lot about it, and Jim Morrison talked this idea that when you get on drugs and hallucinogenics, you write great music. Well, Morrison actually said, whether you like him or not, said, I wrote the worst shit on drugs. He actually, and Bob Dylan talks about this. Bob Dylan says that he writes really bad work on drugs. So the idea that you're writing amazing material, and it's also terrible for someone with mental health. So I think there's something in this idea that you've got to be, on another level to reach that other level of creativity, which I actually think is bullshit. I mean, my father's here, he's a wonderful painter and artist, he doesn't do drugs, but I think creativity is actually in the normative life. If you can create in normal life every day and write about things that are meaningful, that's really hard. That's actually a lot harder. So if you can do that, I think you're a long way down the track. So I think that's got to be talked about more in the music industry, I think, collectively. I think there's a big misconception. I'd signed a young band, I won't say who they were, it was a cataclysmic collapse. They were the hottest band, literally. Columbia had flown out from America to see them at the Annandale Hotel. They were going to be signed, and the band were on, we'd been managing them for about a month and a half, and it was just bang, instant, super instant. And Triple J added it was all happening, blah, blah, blah. They got on MDMA 2 nights before the show. Total reaction to the brain of the lead singer. Bang. He had a cataclysmic failure. He thought he was going to go to another high and write and perform and show these Columbia record guys what it was all about, being true rock and roll. And it was a cataclysmic failure, and they didn't get signed. So I think that's got to be talked about. And I think it's got to be talked about in the broader creative industries, that drugs, I'm not saying no to drugs, I'm actually saying I don't think it necessarily helps. It can help long-term around pot and calming people down after the age of 28, but certainly, I'm not sure, Nolsey, if you disagree with that. Or
No. I agree massively. I think that, but there's a massive stereotype. We all grew up listening to the stories of people, of Jim Morrison taking 27 trips in 27 days.
Totally.
I think a lot of people think that they have to live up to that rock star persona and be the out-drink everyone, out-party everyone, and that's what makes you the ultimate rock star. You know what I mean? 100%.
Yeah.
Oh, and that's right. Yeah, exactly.
Is it also,
100%.
Nolsey, a little bit like when you guys go to Toowoomba or you go to these places, it's their Saturday night in a sense. Even if it's a Tuesday, it is their party night, it's their night, they're seeing Shannon Noll, and they want the full, they expect the full experience.
But I say that to my wife every time. It's funny, especially after the show, I found out I had a lot more relatives than I really did have. I'm his cousin, let me in, sort of thing. But the people that you do run into, and after 20 or 15 years of touring like I have, I find that I've got mates that come to each show just about, and it is their Saturday night. It could be I've got a great stage tech who I love dearly, and he goes, mate, never on the first night. You never have too many drinks in the first night. You remember you've got 2 nights to go. But because you're catching up with people and it's their one night out for the week, could be their one night out for the month, but you've got to do this, back up this night after night, 3 nights a weekend, and then travel all the way back home, then do it all again next weekend. So it is part of the perception or the idea of being in a band and being a rock and roller or whatever, that you have to be this or you're not the real deal, you know. And I think that's what pushes a lot of people into that, you know. And plus try and burning the candle at both ends. People get to the point where they don't want to really get on stage. They'd rather go to bed early that night, but you've got a show that's been selling for 3 months, so you've got to do it. So you've got to do whatever the hell you can to get yourself into that situation. And a lot of times that you're not actually in reality in the place that you're trying to get to in your head, which is probably what them young blokes did.
Absolutely, yeah. And on the personal side, pretty confronting situation for me. About a year and 2 months ago, literally, I got a phone call. I was at work. I'd literally just walked into a boardroom, got a phone call from my best friend's father, and he committed suicide. I'd known him for 33 years. We talked pretty much every second day, and I was set to go down the coast. We surfed a lot in a group of mates, and he died in horrific circumstances. He committed suicide in absolutely horrific circumstances, and that was probably the lowest moment of my life, I think, in terms of interestingly, he didn't have a lot of friends. He was a very charming bloke. Ladies loved him, but there was a lot of trauma there historically, and that was incredibly difficult to deal with. When it's that, you become the kind of surrogate son for the family. That all kicks in, and then you've got to. Us being managers, we have to manage everything, literally, from funerals to wakes to wills to you name it. So all of that journey was incredibly confronting, and I'd never experienced such. I dealt with narcissistic, painful musicians, but that was a whole other level. That was a level of sorrow and depth of depression that I've never experienced before in my life.
Very sorry to hear about your friend. Thank you for sharing it, Francis. Did you have any signs with him along the way? Was this something you discussed?
Well,
with
it's
him?
interesting looking back. I've taken a lot of notes about it. I'm now seeing it in a very close family member of ours. Almost, very similar, but we can cut it off. I think we're going to cut it off. We already are cutting it off, so it doesn't get any further. But I think there's a tendency to not. They're so self-absorbed. I'm not sure if narcissism is the right word. I think they're so full of fear and so full of confusion about their existence. They don't really know why they're important in life. They don't understand the reason for being. The French would say, what are the raison d'etre? What is my reason for being? Bill touched on this, in front of 5,000 people you sold out show. You don't know why you're here. And Ben used to, his name's Ben. Ben used to talk about this. He goes, why am I here? And he'd say, here we go again. And we go on this long journey of discussion of self-hate. And he had everything. The bloke had literally, you'd meet him, he had everything. But there was this hate, this self-loathing, this depth of sadness. And I think there probably were elements of bipolar because he would ramp up. He wouldn't ramp super high. I've seen super ramped up people. That's another level.
No, and I've been bipolar too. The depression is the same, if not worse.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of people get misdiagnosed because
that's right.
My hypomania, I felt fucking amazing. I miss that feeling. So it's very hard to break through. So the first thing, I've become very factual and practical, is the first thing you got to get to a bloody GP quickly. You got to get on a 10 session program straight away. You probably know about this. And you got to get onto medication because it is a chemical situation. A friend of mine told me yesterday he survived suicide, and he said, if you hurt your foot, do you keep walking on the foot or do you go to the doctors and you get it fixed? We don't treat the brain like that. We keep walking on the foot until it falls off. I wish we'd change that. We're working on that, we're changing that.
Yeah.
But that's what we've got to do. So practical moments. Have people around you who are practical. Don't have people who want to talk all the time. Have people who are going to go, get to a GP, get on your program, check your medications, get a good psychiatrist or psychologist or both. There's plenty of programs out there, but the people who fall through the gap and who end up having suicide, going through suicide and obviously passing away, they are of another level, that it doesn't really matter what intervention happens. It's almost impossible to break through sometimes. But on the high, there's always a high. I think the high for me was, God, how long has it been? I'm going to get in trouble now. When I heard the heartbeat of my brand new baby in the belly of my lovely partner.
Oh, amazing.
Which is due on Valentine's Day.
That's so cool.
29 weeks. So that's good.
Round of applause for that. Congratulations.
That's a high. That's a high.
I've lost a friend to suicide. I've been an Are You OK Day ambassador for 3 years. I lost a friend about 10 years ago, Richard Marsland. He was a very talented radio media performer, hosted a lot of shows. He used to write as well for shows like Rove Live, very successful. And to be honest, I would put my hand up and say that I was pretty ignorant about mental health issues before this happened. And I think there's a pattern with that. A lot of people find that until it impacts someone in their life, they don't really give it the understanding it requires.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I had multi-millionaire mates, builders, who were saying, I'm depressed. And I'm going like, mate, come with me to the Royal Children's Hospital and I'll show you real sadness. You know what I mean? So I never sort of really understood it because I'm thinking, what have they got to be negative about, you know? And we owned a little property down in Melbourne and it had a bay window. And I remember it was part of the reason I bought the property. Just sitting at this little bay window looking out was just beautiful, you know? And it was 2012 and I'd just had a back operation and was sort of laid up for 6 weeks and was pretty under a fair bit of pressure, you know? And I remember sitting at that bay window and looking at the same view and it just all felt wrong. And I went, well, how can that feel wrong? Because that's what part of the reason it sold us the property, you know.
You start to get a bit down on yourself, don't you?
Yeah, I just went, well, there's something wrong here, and it's not nothing to do with the bay window. It's got to do with me. So at the time, it was a pretty tough time in the music industry. Well, when isn't it? But I just booked a heap of shows and didn't make any money out of them. But I actually had a feeling of self-worth after being away for 3 nights on the weekend and coming home and doing the shows. You know, I felt like I had to choose something. So I think that self-diagnosis that early, you know, was what probably saved me with it. But it is hard to get your mind around it until you've actually felt it, you know. And when you do, you realise and your mind opens up and you can understand why people think the way they do or say what they do.
Definitely, yeah. And I think when you lose a loved one, I think instinctively what could I have done differently? You even blame yourself to a point. I think that's a natural feeling. One thing that I've taken from the experience is to if you know, how you going, you ask someone how you're going, this guy was a prime example of, good mate. And I think there's a lot of that. There's a lot of people aren't quite ready to have that conversation. So when I talk at mental health events, I'll always say, dig to the second response or even the third response. Like actually eye contact people. It'll feel a bit weird at first, but to just, if you're checking in on a friend, really check in on a friend, because it's very easy to go, I'm good, mate. Yeah, I'm good. Everyone's going to say that because they're not ready to have that conversation, but they need to feel in a comfortable space. I wanted to chat with you, Tim. We're talking about... Do you want to finish that?
Oh, yeah. I just want to add something to that, because when people are in that complete depressive state, the worst thing you can say to them is, you'll be right. Or just shake it off. Like, just don't ever, try your hardest not to say that. Just listen. Just listen to them. Ask the questions and just listen, but don't try and doctor them. Don't try and tell them what they need to do, because they're not in that position to hear that. They just need to know someone cares and just listen.
Absolutely. The language is so important. Tim, lowest points where you've struggled with your mental health. What have you experienced?
Yeah, I think for me early on, my manager who I started with, who really helped me build me, passed away quite early on. And that was quite shocking. And more so looking back in the ways of a few of his other clients, we were getting to a time of intervention of, okay, this is serious, things are going on, we don't know what's going on, we need to do something serious. And then he...
What types of signs are we talking about, Tim?
What types of signs?
What types of signs that you thought there requires an intervention?
Just erratic behaviour. He would say he was at one meeting and he wouldn't be there, or he just wouldn't be making sense.
Out of character
the board.
behaviour?
Yeah, a very out of character. And sadly, I found out a lot more out of character than I knew to be. After he passed away, I found out a lot more. So there's a lot of that you know, kind of. I'm a very kind of self-assured type of person, so I'll just kind of keep plodding on, not knowing the effects of how it really happened to me. I didn't really address it at the time, and I think it took 2 years for me to kind of finally get to a place where all of that area of my life really affected me, and I got to a place where through going through some bad management situations, I felt really alone, and the funny thing with all these conversations in mental health is that everyone's been echoing, which is crazy, is the fact of purpose, and losing your purpose or your why, and how when that's distorted, your self-value is gone, and then that's when these really evil thoughts of, you know, why am I here, come in. And I think the saddest thing is that in the music industry, that people wrap their why around their music persona, because it's just so, it's really not up to you. You know what I mean? It's such a whimsical, flowy type of thing that to wrap your why around something that could just change like that is very scary. So I had to learn to find my purpose, firstly in realizing that me as a human being, I am enough, period, without anything, without accolades, without anyone saying anything. I am enough, and I'm worthy of life and experiencing life. And then just letting myself kind of grow and being vulnerable through those moments. But it was, 2016, I was broke. I was brokety broke. Like,
how did you turn that around in 2016, Tim?
It was a slow process, man. I think I just took responsibility. I was hard on myself, and I realized that I was using the people around me to kind of as the answer of these guys are the people that are going to get me through. And I think once I realized that it's all on me, even if it's people bringing in, it's my decision, it's my career, it's my life. I started to see a change in how I operated, and I got smart, and I couldn't live the flashy life that I thought I needed to live, and I think something we haven't really touched on is the flavor of social media and all of this, which has amped this to a whole nother level that we don't know the full effects of how bad it's getting. And God bless your kids and everyone's kids coming up in this new day and age, because it's scary on how that affects people. But yeah, man, I just had to just start making some smarter decisions.
Man, thank you for sharing. We give it up, Tim.
Thank you.
We're going to take a break soon, guys. I think we'll do a couple more minutes. And then we'll have a little 15-minute break. And when we come back, we'd love some questions from the audience. So please have a think about it. It can be for a specific member of the panel. It can be a general question, but we'd love to hear questions. Just before we go to the break, a lot of people in the room in the music industry are looking for, helpers, pointers, tips, things that might help them with their various experiences. Can we just go along the line and say something that you would like to pass on? Let's use the example of a young artist kind of coming through, breaking into the industry. How do we help them with their mental health situations? If we start with you on the end, Nick.
Yeah, a tool I wish I had at the very beginning was meditation, because it's great to take care of our physical body, go to the gym and stay strong and fit, but the gymnasium for our mind is meditation. Whatever that looks like to you. So it's one of the most powerful things that's ever touched my life, and it's changed everything for me. And yeah.
That's a great example. I've used an app called Headspace, which is just on your phone, 10 minutes. I do it a couple of times a week. A great little reset, and just takes you out of, if you're feeling a bit anxious, you've got all these things going on in your mind and thinking about work. It's a little reset, which I find very useful. Francis?
Probably 3 words. Learn to surf. That saved me on many annoying phone call from an artist. No, but I think there's just artists in general. I think everybody is to have a passion outside your passion. Right. I think there's something that we lack. I've been fortunate enough to grow up in a household of artistic, interesting people, but to have a passion that runs beside that. I always used to tell musicians on tour, when you're not performing, what are you doing? They're generally sleeping. Yeah. And I'm like, get out. I used to try and get into theatre productions, go and see the local theatre production, mix in cultural circles or get outside yourself. The other thing is be of service to somebody else.
That's a great one.
And that's, we set up a Thirsty Meat, we did a lot of work with Starlight, we gave money and supported that. And I set that up, I was like, guys, we've got to be involved with that. We've got to do something, you know. So I think running parallel passion and thinking about other people. It's hard when they're, you know, musicians are direct. Any type of artist is direct and, you know, driven and passionate to have a career, and they're, you know, calling you 73 times a day. Can we have a meeting about a meeting? But run parallel, have a passion, and try to help somebody else while you're doing it.
Great stuff. Well done, Francis. Bill.
I got one thing to say, don't read the YouTube comments.
Now I really want to read them. Mel.
Look, aside from drink wine, just a bit of advice. Don't enter this industry if you want to be famous, because it's not about that. And if you don't have the resilience, if you don't have the creativity, if you don't have the right support network, it's not going to work for you. So don't go in thinking, I'm doing this because I want to be famous, because that's not what this is all about.
Very good. Thank you, Mel. Tim.
Don't do it for the followers. For the gram. They will betray you. I think for me, just understanding that if it's what you really want to do, this is the long game, man, and that's a beautiful thing. It's a career is long, and I'm still learning that as I go. I wanted everything kind of straight away, and the time I thought I could get it, I probably tripled. It was triple in time that I thought. I had this dream of doing this since I was 15 years old. I thought, yeah, I'm going to do it. This was 3 years. Watch me, watch. I kind of got to it by 24, you know what I mean? And then it's just a long game. So understand that it's a process, and understand that these highs and lows make what is a beautiful and like fulfilling life.
Great advice. Nolsey.
Mate, I just think you've got to be comfortable and love the person that you look in the mirror at on Monday morning, and not the one that you look in the mirror at just before you're going on stage. I know so many people that, you know, they won't leave the house until they're looking like they're just about to jump on stage somewhere, you know what I mean? So I think because a lot of times that person gets attention, and the person that they really are, or the person that they've always been, isn't the exciting one, isn't the one that's being celebrated, you know what I mean? And when they lose... they distance themselves from the person that who they are as a person, you know. So you've got to be comfortable with yourself, with who you are and what you're about, and not try and create a character that you think people need, because what people need 1 minute, well, they'll need something else the next minute. So you're stuck with the fallout. So I think at the end of the day, you've got to be happy with the one that you are, and the one that you've always been.
Really useful. Thank you so much for sharing that, guys. So what we're going to do now is have a 10 or 15 minute break. When we come back, we'd love some questions from the audience, but can we please get a round of applause for all of our guests? Absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much. We'll see you soon. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Thank you very much for taking your seats. We are about to commence the Q&A section of tonight. So, first of all, does anyone, show of hands if you'd like to start with the first question. Open slather, go for it. Yes, can we get a microphone? Alana over here with this gentleman. If not, I'll do it myself. Thank you, Anna. This gentleman in the pink shirt. Thank you very much. I'll just tell you what I had for lunch. Chicken tikka masala to kill the time. It was delicious. Over to you, sir.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. I guess my question is there stuff that the industry as a whole should be doing to help manage and respond to the way we treat mental health across the industry, both for artists and for music workers, and for, I'd add in for production crew as well?
Great question. What's your name, sorry, sir?
My name's Clive Miller, and I'm actually from Support Act.
Clive, thank you very much. Who would like to have a go at that one from Clive? Francis?
I think one real thing that we can do is limiting the availability of alcohol. That for artists, you know, first thing you think about.
Mel, you've been voted off the island.
Sorry, Nelson. But just this whole concept that artists are often paid in beer. You do a gig, yeah, well, maybe that. Or you do a gig and you're getting paid $50, but you still get a rider of a couple of slabs of beer. That somehow it's expected that you're going to drink half a dozen drinks every night, and it just becomes the norm. I think that's a real issue. And then on the crew side, I think just the main thing is the sheer hours that they're expected to work. When you've got crew who are expected to load in a PA at 8 o'clock in the morning and they're not leaving until 2 o'clock at night, that's just insane. Nobody should work those kind of hours.
Yeah, Nick?
I have my own solution to this. So on my last tour, I booked all venues in Australia that didn't serve alcohol. So all of my shows were alcohol free, just like my wedding.
And that's really fascinating. Can we just explore that a little bit more? Alcohol free. And did you notice much of a difference between alcohol events and alcohol free events?
Oh my God, it was incredible. So the beginning of my show was quite different because when I walked out on the stage, I would just literally barefooted sit down in the middle of the stage and just close my eyes. And the entire audience would follow. And I found it incredible to bring the audience into a coherent state as a group of people, and then they sort of feel like they're going through this journey together as opposed to having their own experience. And what I've noticed from that was a much more deeply impacted personal experience from that, because they were fully present and they weren't distracted.
That's very cool. Does anyone else want to respond to Clive's question before we move to the next, Francis?
Yeah, I think Bill touched on it. I think drugs were huge. I did a little bit of work for a short period of time in the dance scene with some major DJs coming out from America and things, and the drugs were another level, like a whole other level. And I think that's... you probably all saw the Avicii documentary and what... I'm not sure if you have, but the stuff that bloke went through, and that world is pretty confronting. Like the volume of drugs that are taken is just staggering. And I just don't know how. I never did it. I just went for a surf in the morning. But I don't know how the whole operation, the function stays together when they're doing that volume of drugs, you know. I had the brief privilege of spending a night with Ozzy Osbourne, and he said to me, he goes, I won't do his accent, Knowlesy can do that. But he said he took drugs for, I can't remember how long, I think it was 15 years or whatever. He said, I did it pretty much every day except Sunday, because I think he was mildly religious for a short period of time. But I think that whole sales proposition of the music industry is changing. I think there's, you see emerging artists like the likes of Troye Sivan and even to a certain extent rappers like Chance the rapper. People have gone out on their own. They're not druggers. They're not going hard in that space. They're kind of counterculture players, and they've got whole swathes of followers who are not drinking and they're not doing drugs. Yeah. And you're creating these micro clusters of the music industry. So the music industry, I think, has changed dramatically from being the music industry to micro clusters of industries.
Sorry, one more thing. Yeah. What about the simple act of not putting gigs on so freaking late? Yeah. Like, I mean, mine started at 6:30. Yeah. I was like, screw it, I'm going to be on stage at 7 o'clock. Doors open at 6:30. Wrap the show up at 8:30. I do 2 hours of meet and greet. I'm home by 11 o'clock. Totally.
I work on Sunrise. I wanted this to be a midday today. But that's okay. We'll discuss that for next year. Do we have great responses, guys? Do we have a next question, please? Oh, there's lots of questions. It's great. Let's go to the gentleman at the front in the white T-shirt. Thank you, Anna. What's your name, mate?
I'm James. I'm a facilitator at the Banksia Project. Thank you.
Awesome. Round of applause for James. Banksia Project. Represent.
Thank you. My question's around a big show or a big event when you're on a real big high and you're going home and you're, I guess, coming down from that. How do you get to sleep? How do you sort of switch off from that real big high?
Knowlesy.
Yeah, that's a real hard one for me, because it's obviously... at one stage I worked at a pub too, and I'd do the night shift and we'd close up at 12, and I had the same problem then. You're dealing with people and you're trying to obviously not, you entertain them and be vibrant, I suppose. To just go home and shut that off is a really tough thing, especially when you've had a really good show and you're really on a high is a hard thing, because there's so much of that, because everything sort of happens so quickly and you end up in that same situation night after night where you've had a really good show and nothing went wrong, and you sang really well, and you really, for me, because I take my performance so personally too, nobody can judge me as harshly as I judge myself on how I've performed as a singer. When you're in that vibe that after the show that you're really pumped that it all went well, it's really hard to wind down, you know. And, you know, I'll drink a can of Red Bull before the show, you know what I mean? Any other night of the week, if I have a can of Red Bull after 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm still there. And it's sort of the same thing, you know, so it is a real hard thing. I just sort of try my best, but there's lots of nights where I don't sleep well. I'm not a good sleeper as it is, you know. I've got an excuse at the moment. I've got a 10-month-old at home, and he's just saying, you're not sleeping at all. So it is a hard one, you know, to switch off, you know. I just try and have a hot shower after a gig, you know what I mean? But and then sort of that signifies, you know, that it's over, the night's over, so you've got to, you know, go to bed and try and get some sleep. But you're in a different hotel room every night, you've got different pillows every night, which is a hard thing. I've searched for 15 years to try and get the right pillows at home, but I'm never at home. It's the hardest part. So if anyone's got any help with that in that situation, I'd love it, you know. It'd be great. But I think meditation would be something that I'd be really interested in looking into.
Yeah, you can also throw in, this is my little trick. I eat a giant sweet potato, a baked sweet potato, because it literally grounds you and it brings your energy down. And if you combine that with CBD oil, I'm telling you, it's all good. That's the way to go.
Wow, I'm learning so much. Nollsy needs like a deal to sponsor pillows, sweet potato. This is incredible insight, guys. I did not expect any of that. What about you, Tim? How do you come down after those highs?
PS4 or Netflix or sexy time with a significant other. And there's no preference of order there. That's, yeah, I don't want to be disrespectful. Tried and failed. When you're on the road, sometimes you got to. Yeah, we're all adults here. Are we? I think we are. I keep it really basic, man, and anything that kind of is away from the music that just kind of calms me, I do it. I'm big on Netflix and PS4, though. It's a big thing.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, James, for the question. Moving on to our next question, let's go with the guy through there who has a shirt nearly as loud as mine. Yes. Can we get a microphone to that gentleman, that style icon? What is your name, mate?
Hey guys, I'm Brendan.
Brendan.
I have a question, I guess, just about dealing with being in the public eye, dealing with competition, dealing with constantly being critiqued and criticised. How do you go about it day to day?
Who would like to start with that one? Mel? We've got a mic there. Have we got another mic? We've lost a mic. Oh, it's out in the crowd. We've got 2 mics for 7 people. This is a fancy hotel. Come on, guys, let's get another mic. Go, Mel.
Look, the one bit of advice I'll give you is because take tonight, for example. There might be 5 of you that think I was great, 5 of you that think I was shit, another 5 that go, oh my God, I never want to see her again. The trick is you have to give 0 fucks. You really do. Like, you have to give 0 fucks about what people think because it'll eat you up. You won't understand because there'll be so much positive, so much negative, and you just need to stay true to who you are and you'll always win. Just be you, always.
Nice. I love that. Great answer. Tim?
Deserves dropping the mic. I won't do that. I think it's going off what Mel said, man. You gotta just do you, man. And you have to, what Nollsy said before, you have to wake up next to you. You have to wake up to you. You have to wear it at the end of the day. And, you know, I've been in positions where, you know, I've done great things that I didn't really do for myself. I did it for other people. And even though it went well, I didn't feel good. So I'm like, what's that about? You know what I mean? So you definitely got to do you. No fucks for life.
Nollsy, you want to answer that one? No? Okay, we'll keep moving. Let's go the lady over there close to the curtain. Yes, that's you. Thank you very much. What's your name?
Hello, my name's Jo.
Thanks, Jo.
I was just wondering, in the lead up to one of your events, 2 days, 3 days before your events, the feelings that you get inside, how do you compartmentalise how you're going to react with what you're about to approach, and how you're going to deal with your family, and how you're going to deal with your lives, and how do you get on stage knowing that you are going to be the best that you can be?
Someone got that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't... particularly, you don't always know if you're going to be the best you can be. It's probably the hardest part. What I just sing at home. I mean, I didn't even know what warming up was much beforehand when I used to play in pubs. I just, all of a sudden, down the track, once I found out about it, I realised that's why I started singing better after the third song. I just thought I had a couple of beers. Because I've never had a singing lesson. We didn't have any singing teachers in a school of 60 people, you know, where I grew up. So there's so many learning curves to that. But now I've learned to use my voice so much better, look after it so much better. The few days leading up, I'll just do 5 or 6 songs at home and give myself a bit of exercise. So I used to, back in the day when it first started, like I said before, I was doing like shows every night, except for probably one night a week, Mondays or something, you know. So by the end of the week, I'd start singing really good. My voice would be fit, because it's like any other muscle in your body. The more you work it, the more fit that it gets, you know. It's like training, I suppose. Same thing as playing footy, but now at home, so a couple of days leading up, I'll you know, sit at home and play and sing and sing hard, because I sing fairly hard. So when I come to the show, I'm giving my voice the best chance it can to be the best it can be for the night that actually matters. I think so. That preparation, you know, when I was young, I suppose you didn't respect it enough, and you wouldn't you know, look after it as well. But now I don't go to nightclubs or anything anymore, because you talk over the music, and talking is the worst thing you can do for your voice. In honesty, if you're at a nightclub and you're singing to everybody, it's probably not so bad. But I now really take a point of not giving myself a reason to be upset with myself after the show, if you know what I mean. So if I do everything leading up to it, then for win, lose or draw, I'm happy with my setup, if you know what I mean.
That's amazing, Shannon. Can I ask you, as a parent, do you want to instill in your kids your talent, and have that, what do they call, they say that you should teach your children a talent to be musical or things like that, because I'm an educator. Yep. Do you feel that that's very important in a child's education?
Oh, most definitely. You know, I think it's very hard, though. I would give, you know, my right foot to be able to play piano. But back in the day when Mum was taking us to piano lessons, it was like, you know, she could have cut off both feet if we just got out of it, you know what I mean? So hindsight's a great thing with that, I think. You know, my kids, we'd have the only time really together. We all have a bath together when they were little, when I'd get home, and it'd be my time with them and without their mum in the room, sort of thing. And I tested them all back then if they had an ear, so I just said, repeat up, just do what I did a scale, and they all can carry a note.
Can we please hear a little bit of that scale? Please, come on. Who wants to hear that? Just a little bit. Yeah.
I'd say they have to say, what about me? No.
That's the first thing.
Yeah, straight there. You got to have the killer nose, kids. Hey, the rest can go missing. But the biggest thing, I've never pushed my kids into anything to do with music. Funnily enough, none of them will sing in front of me. I know they all can, but they're all sort of for some reason embarrassed. I don't know why, but I don't encourage them in any way. If they want to do it, I'll definitely guide them or try and help them out. But I want it to be their decision. I want them to do whatever the hell makes them happy, and I'll encourage them in any way that I can. But, you know, what I'm doing, my journey is to put food on the table for them, and I'm doing what I do to do that. But I'm not definitely going to push my thoughts and opportunities onto them. You know, if they want to do it, I'll help them. But it's their life and their decision, I think.
Very cool. Let's get a couple more questions, guys. Let's go this gentleman here in the dark shirt. Thank you very much, Anna. We'll do a couple more questions, guys, and then we will invite you to have a drink upstairs. But thank you so much for hanging around for the Q&A as well. Over to you. What's your name, mate?
Hi, I'm Rob. I actually also help with one of the growth rooms, so I highly recommend them.
Great.
My question is probably for the two managers. Sorry, mate. I think I'm a music lover, so I think one of the toughest, one of the things about loving music is you want to be moved, and you're moved when people go through angst, love, highs and lows. So how do you manage that? Because you're going to attract people that have gone through that. There's very few songs about being content and things are doing well.
I agree. Yeah.
So how are you going to? How do you manage that with someone that's young and performing and basically, splurting their emotions out?
Someone's got to take it.
Kelly, so he can go first.
He said young. That is a really tough question. I think all you can do is be there, be available, be supportive, and not much else.
Yeah, I think you can. I had a slightly different relationship with my artists because I came from a musical background and I didn't want to be on stage. I had a fantastic mentor in Harry Vander of Vander and Young, if anyone knows who he is. And he taught me a lot about music. So I connected with musicians on discussions of pre-choruses and counter melodies and blah, blah, blah. So we actually connected on that level. They would often tell me, you just support them around the creativity. You'd never burden them with your opinion around their creativity. I remember there's a famous story of a CEO losing his job because he told a certain famous musician what single he should have released, and the manager said, that's up to the artist. So I think you've just got to guide and support that emotional journey. If you have a intellectual relationship with them in terms of creativity, then you can have that discussion and you can talk about that world. But if you can't, you're guiding. You're also saying what you shouldn't do. Like you actually advise around, we were talking about this before, around commercial endeavours. You'll tell them what not to do in that world, but in terms of their creativity, I think you let them breathe and do their thing. And they will ask you if they respect you. If they respect you in that space, they'll ask you. And you can give that feedback. Paul McGuinness, I got 15 minutes with Paul McGuinness, amazing man. He managed a small band called U2. And he said his job was to choose the singles, because Bono and Edge, they love each other, but they would disagree all the time. So Paul actually chose the singles. So that dynamic was really interesting, So, it depends.
And I think, just to add quickly, it's really important to respect the artists where they are in their headspace. So it's like if you know that they're on a writing binge, it's not the time to go, let's go through these contracts or see what the balance sheet looks like this month. And I remember saying once with the band I tour managed, the manager walking in 15 minutes before they went on stage and asking him to sign the tax returns, and that just felt so wrong to me as the artist is about, they're playing the entertainment centre. It was just like, you don't do that.
Great answer. I think that's it, guys. I think maybe one more quick question if someone had one. Yes, the gentleman over there. We'll just do one more quick one. Yes, last question. Thank you very much, and then we've got to wind this up. Yes, the lady over there.
No, I might break into song, but I just want... Shannon, first of all, I voted for you on Australian Idol.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
If you'd only voted just a little bit more, we might
I'm the reason you're here. No, I'm joking. I just want to say, take a bow, because you are the most courageous, bravest people. The more you talk about it, the more we're going to destigmatise what is going on. And I am so proud of being involved with Banksia on the peripheral, but I want to applaud all of you for doing something so important and imperative. And I run a business organisation across Australia, New Zealand and Singapore, and we are working with Banksia now to take this model into the corporate sector, so business leaders can do what you're doing, what the garden rooms are doing all across regions. I've got 2 Kiwis here who want to take this to New Zealand, because what's going on in New Zealand is even more frightening than what's going on in our country. And the more we talk about it, the more we're going to change and save lives. So I just want to say thank you. I don't have a question, but keep going and take a huge bow, because that's the biggest gift you can give all of us.
Thank you very much. What a beautiful note to end the Q&A on. Thank you very much for that. That's very generous. Okay, You guys are free to go. You're free to go to the back of the room. Let's please give it up for all of our amazing guests tonight. Nick, Francis, Bill, Mel, Timomatic, Shannon Noll. Honestly, I was saying just before, I met a guy named John, and we were talking about tonight, the first half of it, and I said to him, to talk about these issues is hard enough with friends, with family. To do it in front of strangers, to do it in front of cameras, to do it in front of bright lights like this is incredible. I think you'll agree with me when I say they were all so giving of their personal stories, their connection, and some incredible insight. There's some really great tips in there for people in this industry. So give it up once again for our amazing guests. Thank you. Well done.
And a final round of applause for the MC for tonight that took time out. Yes, Sam Mack.
Thank you very much, Mel.
Just quickly, for those of you that haven't heard the story, so basically Sam got drunk, left his phone in a taxi, and Blake, Brian. B, it starts with B, it's okay. He found your phone, put it on charge, didn't try and sell it at the black market, and returned it to you, and you said, you know what, I'm going to help you at your next event and MC it, and here we are, people. Sam Mack volunteered tonight.
That's how it happened. It's a true story.
Is that not good karma? That is great karma.
2 weeks ago. That's a perfect time to... Can we get a round of applause and bring up the founder of the Banksia Project, Brian Coleman? There he is. Thank you, Mel. That's a true story. He is a very generous man, a very kind man. Obviously, he's a very creative man who's pulled something incredible together, and that's why we're all here tonight. But that's right, we met 2 weeks ago. I was feeling very fragile. I had lost my phone. I lost my identity. There's a lot of photos on that phone that no one should see. It was in very safekeeping. I went to his place. I picked it up. I said, can I give you $100 to, I didn't know, from a bar of soap. Can I buy you like a dinner or something? I wasn't hitting on you. I'm straight. I offered him money. He wouldn't take the money. And then I said, well, can I, donate it? And he said, well, I happen to run a charity. I said, what is the charity? He said, the Banksia Project, mental health. I said, that's an Are You OK thing. I'm an ambassador. Can we donate it to that? He said, yes. So we donated the money. And then as I was leaving, I said, if I can ever do something, to help your initiative, your project, I'd love to help out. I can host an event, anything I could do. I can mention it on TV, whatever I can do to support it, I'd love to do it. And little did I know that 2 weeks later, he'd be booking me in. So he moves fast, is what I've learned about him. But ladies and gentlemen, give it up for the founder, Brian Coleman.
Thanks, Sam. I just want to first thank all of our amazing speakers and all of you guests who are here today in attendance. My name is Brian Coleman and I'm the founder of the Banksia Project. We are a charity which works in early intervention in mental health amongst the male community. I started the Banksia Project after surviving my own suicide attempt in 2009. I realised I needed to learn more about mental health, and together with industry professionals, clinical professionals, we designed two programs to encourage further education and support services. These include our growth rooms, the gym for the mind, where groups of men get together on a monthly basis to learn useful tips. This closer, like that? Okay. Learn useful life tips and talk openly in a confidential and supportive environment. Each group is facilitated by a trained volunteer, who some are present tonight, and we have on-call professionals available for anyone in need. Our second focus is our garden rooms. These events are so important because we begin conversations on industry topics. These are led by leaders of industry and lived experience people. Today we focused on mental health in the music industry. An important discussion. We started this with our event partner, Support Act, and I want to Support Act to provide a 24-hour free and confidential telephone counselling service for the Australian music industry. I just want to say thank you to Clive Miller from Support Act, and we look forward to supporting the music industry together with our tailored growth rooms in primary locations. More news to come. Thank you. Thank you to our partners, ARIA, Ovolo Hotels and Medibank. We'll all be available this evening to answer any questions that you may have. And now, to close this event, we are very excited to showcase Nick Broadhurst's new single, Inner Love, which is a raw journey during a coming out of his depression, written by Nick Broadhurst and Will Cumming. It is an inspiring single for anyone who has come face to face with mental illness, from dark to light. Thank you all so much, and we hope you have a joyous festive season. Thank you. Thanks, bro. Thanks, mate. That was amazing. Thank you, Shannon.
Sorry, Brian, okay, Blake. You always be Blakey, Brian.
I can be your Blake. I can be your
Can you be my Blake?
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. Thanks so much, man.